Hello, how are you? Well, I apologize it took this video so long to get made. I'm in the process of moving to a new place. That has been occupying a great deal of my time, and I'm sorry that this upload took so long to make, but I think now it's finally time that we take a look at loot boxes once more because there has been a rather, frustrating turn of events recently in their regard, mostly how the ESRB has decided to classify them. Now, the ESRB stands for Entertainment Software Rating Board, and they're the ones who assign age and content ratings for video games like these. These are the ESRB ratings. Now, a while back in October of 2017, in an email to Kotaku, ESRB said they don't see loot boxes as gambling. I know, it's weird. I'm like, what the fuck? In that email, they said ESRB does not consider loot boxes to be gambling. While there's an element of chance in these mechanics, the player is always guaranteed to receive in-game content, even if the player unfortunately receives something they don't want. We think of it as a similar principle to collectible card games. Sometimes you'll open a pack and get a brand new holographic card you've had your eye on for a while, but other times you'll end up with a pack of cards you already have. Well, this is dumb. Let us consider. Recently, the ESRB decided that what it would do about all the hullabaloo surrounding the loot box controversy caused by EA and Battlefront 2, though the negative sentiment against them had been gathering for some time, would be to list on boxes and in online descriptions a notice for players and purchasers to know that there would be in-game purchases in the video game. Well, that's not a very efficient way to address the issue. What does this mean exactly? Basically, every video game has an ESRB rating attached to it. Here's an example. Rated M for mature, 17+. Blood and gore, language, sexual content, violence. Pretty standard, especially for today. Nothing special about that, nothing that stands out. But what you might start seeing in the future, if this is the way that the ESRB ultimately decides they're going to be handling this, would maybe be a label like this. Blood and gore, language, sexual content, violence, and in-game purchases. Not only does this seem like a very anemic answer to the question that people are asking, what are you going to do about it? Let's look at it this way. If you saw that on a label, and let's say you're a parent, let's say you're just any consumer, let's say you're good at being you, right? Let's say you're a dirty peasant, you stroll into GameStop or Walmart or Target or what have you. You look at the back of the box and you see that it has in-game purchases. What does that mean? What is that supposed to explain to you? It's such a broad, ambiguous term. Not all in-game purchases are the same. That's obvious to you and I, but it's still not very explanatory based on the label on the box. A lot of the times people say, think of the children as a defense for why things should be changed, and a lot of the time it's just meant to tug at your heartstrings. But here, I think it's pretty appropriate. Let's imagine you're a parent. You're buying a game for your kid. What does the label mean? Obviously, the problem is that it doesn't distinguish between the different kinds of in-game purchases that exist. It lumps them all together in the same label, under the same name. Let's say you boot up a fun co-op game, especially like Helldivers. You're playing it, you're there with your friends, you're having a good old time, and you see that other players are running around with stuff that you can't unlock without paying some DLC stuff for. Is it pay to win? Well, that's a discussion for another time, but for the sake of this video, let's just stick with the idea that it's a game with tons of DLC. The DLC that's included in a game like Helldivers is a lot of small DLCs. There's a lot of them, and they're pretty cheap individually. They don't have the massive expansion pack kind of feel to them. You spend a couple bucks, you get some stuff, and you move on with your life. Simple as that. Others take a bit of a different approach to DLCs, releasing large expansions. The Witcher 3 is a good example. There's only 3 DLCs for that, 3 in-game purchases, the expansion pass, Hearts of Stone, and Blood and Wine. Very large, very expansive, and very excellent high-quality DLCs. Just like Helldivers, in-game purchases. Now, the ESRB decision might not be all that bad if it had stopped there, but it doesn't, because we've got more. Because loot boxes are included under the exact same category as paid DLCs and microtransactions. Under the ESRB's decision, there is no distinction between any of these. A Civilization-style expansion pass, or a DLC like The Witcher or Helldivers, or loot boxes, it's all under the same title, in-game purchases. I think a lot of people wouldn't have much of a problem if the ESRB had included these as a different type of classification, but they did not. It's all lumped together. There's no distinction. And that is the problem. The ESRB begins their statement by outright saying loot boxes aren't gambling, and while there's an element of chance in the mechanics, the player is always guaranteed to receive in-game content, even if the player, unfortunately, receives something they don't want. Loot boxes are gambling. What the ESRB, and for whatever reasons they might have for saying that no, that's totally not gambling, guys, no problem there, it's ultimately irrelevant to the fact that that is what they are. Why are they gambling? Why would I wager, you could say, so much on the assertion that they are gambling? It's because I certainly don't agree with the ESRB's assessment of what does and doesn't make it gambling. At first Google glance, you see a couple definitions presented. Play games of chance for money or to bet, to take risky action in the hope of a desired result. Or gambling is the wagering of money or something of value on an event with an uncertain outcome, with the primary intent of winning money or material goods. Gambling thus requires 3 elements to be present: consideration, chance, and prize. I think most of us instantly think about gambling at casinos or playing cards or rolling dice as what gambling is. And in strict legal technicalities, maybe that's right in some places. But there's obviously a principle to gambling here that's going completely ignored. Based on what the ESRB has said in their statement to Kotaku late last year, the reason that they don't consider loot boxes as gambling because they are always, the player, guaranteed to receive in-game content. There's no way for them to receive nothing. Now, the obvious problem with this is that you might receive something that has absolutely no value. It is a duplicate of something that you already own, and there can be no quality and no bonus and no benefit from having duplicates of that thing. Some games, like Overwatch, allow you to turn a duplicate into a type of in-game currency that's used to purchase different things. Other games, they don't give you anything. And in some games, they give you a reward, perhaps, based on you getting a duplicate of something, but if it's extremely common or easy to obtain, then it has practically no value to you, especially if you've been sinking quite a few hours into that game. Maybe crafting materials in an extremely small quantity, or loot that's a quality tier at the very lowest that serves absolutely no purpose and can be put to no appreciable use. But according to the ESRB, the fact that you can't technically lose and get absolutely nothing for your investment, that means it's no longer gambling. What's interesting, though, is that this is the qualifier that the ESRB uses for whether or not something is gambling, and so let's imagine this scenario. Let's say you go to Las Vegas, Nevada, an amazing place if you guys haven't been, would highly recommend. It is hot, dear Lord. Even at night, it was sweltering. Ugh. And the breasts everywhere didn't help. Yeah, boy! Let's say you go to Las Vegas. Let's say you walk into the casino floor of Caesar's Palace, MGM Grand, wherever, going to Vegas, gonna have a great time, and you go up to, let's say, some electronic poker machines, and dollar by dollar, $5 by $5, you put your money, you spin the digital wheel, and eventually you lose. But what if every time you press the button, every time you pulled the lever to make the numbers and the symbol spin, you were guaranteed to make 1 cent back? If you didn't win, the game magically spat you back out a penny. It gave you a ticket to bring to the cashier for 1 cent. You put $1 in and lose. Oh, don't worry. Here's your complimentary 1 cent check for the cashier. I guess the ESRB wouldn't consider this gambling because you couldn't lose. You were guaranteed to make back at least 1 cent. If every time you buy a loot box in a video game and you're guaranteed to get at least something, then by the exact same rules, would that no longer be gambling if you were guaranteed to receive a cent every time you spun the wheel on a poker machine? There would be no reason to legislate it. There would be no age limit. There would be no reason to keep children from buying chance after chance from these machines. Maybe the distinction comes in because we're comparing real money to a digital item. But what if the digital item has value? What if the digital item can be sold on, say, a Steam marketplace or some sort of a skin reseller? What if you could take the items that you earn and turn them into real money through any means at all? It wouldn't have to be through Steam directly or through the game directly. as long as there was a way to turn that digital item into real currency because it would have real value, because if somebody's willing to pay for it, it does have value. Would those items in particular be held to different rules than items in games where you weren't able to resell, or where items could not be sold for real money? If you were able to recycle an item gained through a loot box for some sort of in-game currency, fragments or credits or crafting components or points, whatever you'd like to call them, would the rules be different? I cannot turn the items that I get from an Overwatch loot box into real money, but I can do that for items, let's say in Killing Floor 2, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, for instance. How, other than having one extra step in order to make that real money, would that be, in principle, any different than going into a casino, to a slot machine, and pulling the lever? Something to consider, perhaps. Maybe one of the reasons is because we don't consider video games as the grown-up thing that it is. We don't consider video games to be as legitimate as casinos. We don't consider it to be bound to the same rules or bound to the same principle of operation as we do a casino. It's different because it's different. It's newer. It's not normal. It's not the norm. At least it's not accepted as the norm. Every day, every year, video games become more and more popular. It's just a matter of whether or not the law can catch up to reality. But it has. Regardless of whatever legislation becomes of it, regardless of whatever a lawmaker might say, and regardless of what the ESRB might declare it to be, it is what it is. The verbatim lettering of the ESRB email to Kotaku expressly stated that the player is always guaranteed to receive in-game content, even if the player unfortunately receives something they don't want, which clearly denotes that they understand the concept of a loss. You lost out, because it's unfortunate that you got what it did. If you're always a winner, then there would be no unfortunate outcome. Everybody who is listening to this video, whether they agree that loot boxes are gambling or not, everybody who's watching this video knows what it's like who's purchased a loot box, that there are winning pulls and there are losing pulls. It's very interesting that the ESRB directly says that it's, in principle, identical to pulling a collectible card game pack. I was a Magic the Gathering player years ago. I played Friday Night Magic, I had Hero Clicks, I did all that stuff. It was fun, I had a good time, I should go back, see how the place is. But don't tell me that there's no thought given to the return in investment potential when it comes to what games people decide to play. Games where there's a higher potential to get back what you made definitely influences people on whether or not they'll play that game. Opening up packs of playing cards, trading cards I should say, and pulling the lever of a slot machine, in principle these are identical. They're gambling. One is socially acceptable for minors and the other is not. They both operate in the exact same way. You pay an entrance fee to play a game of chance in order to hopefully get an outcome that you desire. The winnings can then be turned into real-world currency and can even be played for potentially a profit. And I'm not against gambling. Not at all. I'm not at all against gambling. But I think we just need to be honest about what is and isn't a game of chance. What is and isn't gambling. We're used to buying card packs, a lot of us, because we did it as kids. But if you really broke down what we were doing, we were gambling. You might even say it was worse than gambling because of the less than likely outcome that we would come out ahead. It's worse to play card games than it is to gamble, in that sense. If the house wins, 54% of the time? Do you think that out of all the collectible card game packs that you opened, you got your money back 54% of the time? I would guess that you didn't. Societal perception is very important, and it plays into the heart of this issue. I don't have a problem with loot boxes because they're gambling. I have a problem with loot boxes because they're gambling. They should just be upfront about what they are. In-game purchases are not all created equally. There's DLCs, there's expansion passes, there's microtransactions, and there's loot boxes. And we have definitely crossed a line into something different in principle when we start talking about loot boxes. Yes, they're technically in-game purchases. They're purchases you make in the game. But I think we can all agree that they are not cut from the same cloth. A lot of people, though, would believe that the comparison between loot boxes and collectible card games is not exact, and they're correct. It's not an exact comparison. The principle is identical. However, the ability to trade and sell off cards that you receive from these packs, especially because they're physical items, is a lot higher than the chance you have to sell off digital items. This, however, gets into the specifics of the items in question. Because with many, many loot boxes, once you get it and it's yours, it could be completely devoid of value to you. You don't have the option to turn it into real money, and that, I think, is the biggest difference between the two. If anything, all this does is show that laws as they are not quite ready to deal with digital content in the same way they have had, well, all of human history to deal with real content, physical goods. It is a new world, and the times they are a-changin', and the laws need to catch up with that one way or another. By the way, there's this really cool website that I found for buying and selling Counter-Strike Go skins. The ESRB had a chance to bring into modern times the law that would reflect the nature of the rising value and popularity of digital goods. Instead, their response was weak, spineless, and anemic. Their failure to differentiate, and rightfully so, the difference between DLC, microtransactions, expansion passes, and loot boxes, gambling-style loot boxes, is without a doubt a misstep for the ESRB, and it will tarnish their reputation for a long time to come. People love to gamble, and there's a reason for that. It plays on our psychological needs and desires. Take, for instance, what's called variable rate reinforcement. Dr. Luke Clark, director at the Center for Gambling Research at the University of British Columbia, says that the player is basically working for reward by making a series of responses, but the rewards are delivered unpredictably. We know that the dopamine system in your head, which is targeted by drugs of abuse, is also very interested in unpredictable rewards. Dopamine cells are most active when there is maximum uncertainty, and the dopamine system responds more to an uncertain reward than the same reward delivered on a predictable basis. It plays on human psychology, you see. That's why, if you go into a casino, they're not going to let you operate the slot machines or play video poker. Hell, they won't even let you on the floor in many cases if you are underage. I was, of course, allowed in because I'm an emotional support animal, and I was carded because I look a little young for my age, but I'll just chalk that down to a long-term advantage. The problem is that loot boxes in video games, especially when they are being played by so many people who are underage to do, in principle, the same thing on a casino floor, do not yet have the maturity of an adult in order to make the decisions or to try and counteract the potential addictive nature of what loot boxes and gambling are. It is preying upon children. There's a myriad of potential fixes to this problem. For instance, having specially designed stickers and notices on boxes that denote loot boxes or gambling features. Call them games of chance because there's no skill to be had in these. Should they automatically get a M for mature sticker on them? Should they automatically get a T for teen sticker? Should they be emblazoned with a special icon that denotes these games of chance? Who knows? Ask 10 people, you might get 10 different responses. Either way, I would imagine that most people think it is a mistake to lump in traditional DLCs and expansion packs alongside gambling-style loot boxes. And something tells me I won't shed a tear if EA or Ubisoft's bottom line is affected by the fact that they can't take advantage of these systems of gambling built into the game. Remember how back in November of last year, EA told its investors that the loss of Battlefront 2's microtransactions would have an immaterial impact on the bottom line? And honestly, if it did have a material impact, maybe that would teach them a lesson. And it wasn't ultimately the inclusion of the loot boxes that I believe led to the greatest uproar surrounding Battlefront 2 and EA's decision. It was their pay-to-win nature that got most people in an uproar. For instance, let's go back to Overwatch. Overwatch. There we go, Overwatch. Overwatch has a loot box system, and it is not pay to win. It's pay for cosmetics, skins, little dance moves, emotes, phrases and stickers, nothing that has any actual effect on the gameplay. And when you couple its non-pay-to-win element with the fact that it comes with free DLC, free maps, free characters, free events into perpetuity for one single buy-in price, I think a lot of people can without a doubt accept that as something that is certainly workable. Not all loot boxes are egregious in the same degree. I think Overwatch does it in a way that most games should learn from. No matter how much money you spend on loot boxes and random rewards in Overwatch, you will not be a better player, you just might potentially look better doing it. Overwatch-style loot boxes, though, are often held up as poster childs of where everything went wrong, though undeservedly so. I use them as a way to illustrate maybe how they could be done right, how more games could probably use this model and win over hearts and minds. The amount of content that I get from Overwatch for my single one-time purchase of entry, that seems definitely to be a net positive to me. If games are going to be supported for years and years, they need to be viable for years and years. That's a physical reality of companies in the way that they do business. I have absolutely no right to demand companies operate games at a loss for my enjoyment. I know that might sound anti-consumer, but that's just pragmatic reality. And if a game can keep delivering me free, quality content for years, and the price of that is completely optional, cosmetic-only loot boxes, well, that's a model that I can work with. There's a lot of room for nuance and discussion about the details concerning what might happen in the future, and that's honestly a debate that we should have. Reading this Rolling Stone article that I'll link in the description, though, about the Esrb's explanations for why they're doing what they're doing, it just makes me scratch my noggin all the more. While the new labeling and outreach program seemed aimed at informing parents and users about the inclusion of a wide variety of in-game purchases, it won't specifically detail the sort of purchases available in a game, nor will the addition of this label, which will be listed as one of the many available unrated online interactions, have any impact on the game's rating. In coming up with this new policy, Patricia Vance, president of the ESRB, said that the ESRB has done a lot of research over the past several weeks and months, particularly among parents. This is the Rolling Stone, you shouldn't have errors like this. What the board learned was that a lot of parents they spoke to didn't know what a loot box was, and those that did were still more interested in the money being spent, not how it was spent. So the ESRB outright comes out and says that a lot of parents don't understand what loot boxes are or the nature of them, and yet they make absolutely no concessions as to why they didn't differentiate between traditional DLC-style microtransactions and what is basically online gambling. Gee, that makes sense. Maybe some of the confusion would be cleared up if we took a look at ESRB's official statement regarding this decision. So, straight from the official ESRB Twitter at the end of February, let's see if you're as baffled as I am. You may have noticed that we've been a little quiet on the topic of in-game purchases and loot boxes, but we've been listening. In fact, we've absorbed every tweet, email, Facebook post, and singing telegram sent our way, and we've been working to develop a sensible approach to let gamers and parents know when a game offers the option to purchase additional content. Starting soon, ESRB will begin assigning a brand new label to physical games, in-game purchases. This label, or as we call it, interactive element, will appear on boxes and wherever those games can be downloaded, for all games that offer the ability to purchase digital goods or premiums with real-world currency. So all of them. This includes features like bonus levels, skins, surprise items, such as item packs, loot boxes, mystery rewards, music, virtual coins, and other forms of in-game currency, subscriptions, season passes, upgrades, for instance to disable ads, and more. We're also launching a new website, parentaltools.org, to help raise awareness of the helpful tools that parents can use to manage the amount of time or money those crafty kids spend playing games. This is the first step of many. We'll continue to discuss how to further enhance our rating system with publishers, developers, gamers, and especially parents, and we'll continue to make adjustments as the needs arise. Thank you for all of your patience on this, and your love for the games we rate. Now, this doggo is no conspiracy theorist, but something about this rubs me the wrong way, and I don't like to be rubbed the wrong way. I want to be rubbed the right way. Up and down on the belly with small, circular motions of the palms, fingers oscillating affectionately. This last sentence, though, should serve as a stark reminder to the reader as to why the ESRB even exists at all. To rate video games. They have an investment in the continued success of video games, and as a result, something tells me that they're not going to be quick on the draw to make changes, such as maybe saying this game contains gambling-style reward systems, which would be a far more useful, far more accurate representation of loot boxes, but you bet that would scare many a parent away. If they were going to be honest about the real nature of what loot boxes are, it would be without a doubt detrimental to the sales of these games, especially ones made by parents. Parents are going to see the word gambling on the box, and even if it's true, they're not going to buy it. But you bet they'll take notice of it, and then they'll start complaining. And when the mamas start complaining, the lawmakers get involved, and then things really go to shit. I know it does sound a little conspiratorial, but something in my head can't let me escape the notion that the ESRB doesn't want to be honest about loot boxes because of the effects that it'll have on the legalization and the regulation that would have to be implied in order to be consistent on the video game industry. Patricia Vance in the ESRB was asked whether loot boxes, while not gambling in their eyes, may still feature an element of the same addictive nature found in gambling. She said that she saw no evidence of that. She said, "We've tried to find research, but can't find any evidence that shows that children are impacted by loot boxes, leading them to have a tendency to gamble." She also said that the ESRB has no plans to conduct its own research into the matter. Which is weird. You'd think that they would want to find out if this is something that's really affecting kids. They have a strange level of apathy about them that says, we've done something, which means we've done something, which means you can't criticize us for not doing something because we totally done something. Maybe to a degree, that was a wise decision on their part. I don't know off the top of my head, especially how many lawmakers are really into the culture of video games or really understand the mechanics that are present in so many games these days in the loot box structure. But it's so frustrating to me because everybody who knows anything about the system can see that there's an issue. And we can see that this issue is only gonna get worse, more egregious as time rolls on if nothing's done. At the end of this Rolling Stone article, though, there's a few things that Patricia Vance said that seem extremely damning. They show a level of apathy you wouldn't expect from somebody who's supposed to be doing this for the good of the consumer. Vance was asked why, in labeling games that have in-game purchases, why the ESRB isn't listing out what those purchases are. Many, if not most games, do have some form of in-game purchase, which could lead to a sort of blanket labeling that would make the new system useless. A fair question. Vance said in reply, "Parents need simple information. We can't overwhelm them with a lot of detail. We need to be clear and concise and make it easy for them. We haven't found that they are differentiating between mechanics. 9 out of 10 parents require kids to get permission to make purchases. With that stat alone, we know that providing general information is useful. At the end of the day, if a parent is concerned on the impact a game may have on their children's money or time, we have parental controls, and that's why we're launching parentaltools.org today." Earlier, Vance was the one who said that most parents don't know what loot boxes are. Now she's saying that parents would be confused by it. They wouldn't understand the concept. And even if they did, just because you can't see a difference doesn't mean that there isn't one. Who knows, at the end of the day, what effect this is having on kids? A lot of gamers who are surrounded by it, who see this every day, have, I think, a righteous reason to feel that this could have a negative impact on people. Ultimately, children have the ability to partake in gambling. It's digital, and it's not traditional, but it is gambling. It takes away your money and gives you something that you don't have the chance to get your value back from, at least in many cases. It's so quick and so easy to do that it's extremely likely that this kind of behavior is going completely under the parents' radar. I don't think that parents are being foolish or neglectful when kids take advantage of these features that they shouldn't have access to. I just think that they don't know it's happening. A lot of parents, and I could be the first one to tell you, don't understand the nature of how these games work on the intimate levels that the kids who play them do. And as a result, we all know how easy it is and how quick it is for you to buy a loot box or to make a purchase. And even if it's done with the kid's own money, well, if it's okay to gamble as long as the kid's using his own money, then all that sounds like to me is that companies are being all the more predatory, trying to take children's money away from them, using gambling mechanics that are designed by their nature to take advantage of the way our brains work. Methods in which children simply are not matured yet enough to safeguard against. Here's the deal, Patricia Vance. I'm gonna be honest with you. I know you'll never watch this video, let's be honest, but I know why you're doing this. You're not afraid that parents won't understand. You're afraid that they will understand. You're terrified of the idea that parents will see the word gambling-style mechanics written on the side of a box, and then they won't buy the games, and then politicians will get involved in the games, and then people will come for you. But I suppose that's far easier than just doing the right thing, isn't it? This new response is both unfair to more reasonable loot box systems like those found in games like Overwatch, and instead lumps these in, egregious or not, with more traditional DLC purchases that are much more easier to explain to parents anyway. For us gamers, it goes without saying that not all in-game purchases are created equal. And for those who aren't familiar with how video games work, it would only take, what, a minute of casual conversation to explain the differences? You're not worried that parents won't understand. You're worried that they will. I understand that this video may have seemed a little bit more serious than other videos that I have done, but I wanted it to be informative. I wanted to present information in my point of view on the matter. If you like what I do and you'd like to keep me making videos like this one here, please consider donating to my Patreon. The revenue that I earn from YouTube, as well as donations from Super Chat and streams and from generous patrons here, are what keep kibbles in the bowl. It's my full-time job now. At the end of the next video that I release here, hopefully within a few days, my Discord will be open publicly, and the patrons who donate to me through Patreon will receive unique roles and prioritized voice chat privileges there as well. And I'll begin listing my patrons from the most contributing down. So if you like what I do, if you want to keep supporting me, this is the best way to do it. Even $1 every month adds up, and I appreciate it immensely. And if not, just watch my videos, leave a comment, and let me know what you think. If all you do is watch, then hey, you're doing way more than most of the world is, and I wouldn't be here without you. Tell me what you feel about loot boxes. Tell me what you feel about their comparison to collectible card games, and maybe how you feel the ESRB could have rated these things far better than they did. You guys have an awesome day, and I will catch you later. Ciao.